Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show on this day before Brexit 1776, the 2017 edition of that. I saw somebody tweet that out, and I thought that was absolutely perfect because it was a globalist empire that we fought against. We wanted to have control over our own lives, and it was an act of secession. Yes, that dirty word that we keep hearing over and over again. And again, as we were talking about, what are the globalists going to do? We know they're not going to go quietly. You know, there's certain times that we've seen in history and certain people, like between the Scandinavians, we've had Sweden, Denmark, Norway. They have, at different times, they've been consolidated together in one government. At other times, they've peacefully gone their own way. Same thing happened with Czechoslovakia. You had the Czech Republic, the Slovaks. They went their own ways peacefully. But that doesn't tend to happen in most places. In most places, those in power will not give it up without a fight. But we're going to keep trying to do this, and we're going to try to do it peacefully if we can, but we're going to do it one way or the other. Now, when we look at Obamacare, and I think this is very interesting as we see that Donald Trump tweeted out on Friday, if Republican senators are unable to pass what they're working on now, they should immediately repeal, he put uppercase, and then replace at a later date. And subsequent to that, we had Rand Paul, we had Ben Sasse come on and say, yeah, we'd like to see repeal first and then replace it. I think just from a pragmatic standpoint, that makes a great deal of sense. But the thing that I have always been concerned about, and I think that's why we need to have repeal first, the thing I've always been concerned about is this plan that originally came out with Paul Ryan, where phase 2 was going to be using the powers of the health czar that had been created, the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Those dictatorial powers that had been given to the health czar were then going to be used to remove some of these oppressive regulations that Obama had put on us. The problem with that, of course, is that if you don't repeal it, if you use the power structure, the illegitimate power structure that was put in place by Obama, that illegitimate power structure is then going to be used to attack you by the next administration. So you have to get rid of the unconstitutional, the tyrannical structure that has been put in place. So after Trump said that on Friday, we had a top White House official and several senators saying on the Sunday shows that Congress should consider a standalone bill to repeal Obamacare if they can't agree on how they're going to replace it. And this is what Mark Short, the White House's legislative affairs director, said. He said, if the replacement part is too difficult for Republicans to come together, then let's go back and take care of the first step and repeal. And this is what Short and Senator Sasse have noted. They said, you have 50 members who are on record already as having voted for that recently. So that is an option. At that point, if you repealed it, then you can come back with a replacement effort that could be more bipartisan. Also, Senator Mike Lee said yesterday on CBS's Face the Nation, the idea of proceeding on 2 separate tracks is very much worth considering. There is a consensus that is being built on that. Donald Trump is going to have to lead, because you're not going to get the leadership from McConnell. You're not going to get the leadership from Paul Ryan. Those are guys who use this as a wedge issue to get elected, but they never had any interest, in my opinion, to repeal it. They never had a plan. They never had a plan to replace it. And if you don't have a plan, you're planning to fail. And that's basically what has happened. It's as if after 8 years of saying how they're going to get out of this, Donald Trump gets elected, said we need to replace this, we need to repeal it and replace it, and they come out as if they had never heard of the idea before. These are people who have run election after election to get elected, saying we're going to repeal and replace it, but they had no plan. They hit the ground flat-footed weeks after Donald Trump took office. They still didn't have a plan, and they still haven't crafted anything. And the way that they've done it, by doing it in secret, dropping this massive bill on people, was designed to fail. So now we have Mike Lee, we have Ted Cruz coming out and saying, let's repeal it. We've got a consensus building with the people who are the conservatives, the people who campaigned against Obamacare and really meant it. Remember that we've got the GOP establishment that, as Elizabeth Warren said, we have tried a Republican plan. She pointed out that Obamacare was really Romney care. That's absolutely right. She's from Massachusetts. She knows that what we had with Romney Care, that was supported also by Ted Kennedy, that was a Republican establishment plan. And so they gave us a choice in 2012. You know, we could pick Romney or we could pick Obama, but we were going to get that health care plan that was designed to fail. And she knows that the next step is single payer. And so I want to talk about this situation that now Donald Trump, again, brought to everybody's attention. The Pope came out and said something that was basically non-committal, saying, oh, I really feel your pain, but he's not going to say what should be done. But Trump says, hey, if I can help, let me know. Because this is a child, Charlie Gard, who last week got word that all of his appeals for health care were going to be shut down by the compassionate single-payer health system of the UK, the National Health System. They were not going to allow him to transfer to the United States for an experimental treatment. Now, that wasn't going to be allowed. They had a GoFundMe campaign, and it was a long shot, but it was their only shot. And they said, no, you're not going to be allowed to take that. Then they came back, and they appealed that through the British courts, and they appealed it to the European Commission or whatever, some European court. All of these courts are nothing but death panels, folks. That's what we said from the very beginning, wasn't it? When the government controls your health care, and that's what single payer is, that means that the government is going to control everything about your health care. If doctors want to donate their services, not going to be allowed. If hospitals want to donate their services, not going to be allowed. If the public wants to get together in a GoFundMe campaign, not going to be allowed. So you have to understand that in the real world, everything is rationed, and that includes health care. It's going to be rationed one way or the other. The question is, who's going to make these decisions? And as long as you've got a free market, you can always have people come together and make an exception to the rule, come together to help an individual like this. But if you have single-payer health care, you're going to have a heartless bureaucracy that is going to dictate the terms of your health care, dictate the terms of everyone's health care. And they're not going to allow any exceptions at all. I want to play you what the parents had to say after they learned that their child had been given a death sentence. So they looked at it and they said, well, we've got three choices. And one of those choices that we would like to do is to bring the child home. And I want you to hear what they say. The government, the compassionate government, the single-payer system told them. Here's that clip.
And we had three options. One option was to let Charlie go in hospital. The other option was to let Charlie go to a hospice. And the third option was to let Charlie go home to die. So we chose to take Charlie home to die. And we have said this for months, that is what we want. That is our last wish, if it went this way, the way it's gone. And we've promised our little boy every single day that we will take him home. Because that is a promise we thought we could keep.
We want to give him a bath at home. We want to sit on the sofa with him. We want to sleep in the bed with him. We want to put him in a cot he's never slept in. But we're now being denied that. We had a meeting yesterday where we were told we were going to discuss our options. And, we said we'd like to take him home. If that's not possible, can we take him to a hospice? They said no to both. He has to die in that hospital tomorrow.
They said they couldn't get transport to take us home, so we've offered to pay for that privately with a private team, and they said that that's not an option.
You hear that?
Let's
stop it at that point. So here they are. They've been told by the courts, by the single-payer government system, no, we're not going to allow you to have your child travel to get experimental treatment in the United States, even if you pay for it with the GoFundMe thing. No, your child is going to be killed. Your child is going to be killed. That was last Tuesday. We're going to take your child off of life support and kill him on Friday. And they said, well, can we, instead of letting him die in the hospital, can we take him home? We would like to spend some time with him. We've been talking to him about this. And they said, no, you can't do that. We don't have any money for it. We'll pay for it. No, that's not an option. You can't pay for it. See, single payer. No exceptions to this bureaucratic rule. Remember what George Washington said? This is something we should think about on this 4th of July. He said, government is not reason. It is not eloquence. It is not compassion. It is force. It is force. And what we're talking about here is a healthcare that is operated by force, not by eloquence or reason or compassion, but by force. And like fire, it is a fearful servant and a dreadful master. I will not be mastered by a government healthcare system, and you better not let this happen either. The only way we're going to stop this, one of us can't stand up against this. We're going to have to stand up against this collectively and say, the hell, you're not going to take away my health care. You're not going to do this to my children. You're not going to do it to my grandchildren. And I want to read you what the Washington Post said this last weekend. A British couple have been given more time with their terminally ill son. Isn't that nice? They gave them a bit of a reprieve. Still not going to let them go home. Still not going to let them go to hospice. Still not going to let them go to the United States for an experimental treatment. But the Washington Post, statists that they are, put their little spin on it and say, well, they've given them some more time with their terminally ill son, so they're not going to kill him just yet. We'll just let this play out a little bit longer. They say British courts decided that Charlie should be allowed to die after a legal battle in which doctors asserted the child had no chance of survival. That's their opinion. And Charlie's parents argued that there was an experimental treatment in the U.S. that they had not tried. They took it all the way to the European Court of Human Rights. What a joke. Court of Human Rights. Declined to hear the case on Tuesday, upholding the previous court's rulings. Let's talk about the Declaration of Independence. Remember, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that we have been given these inalienable rights by our Creator. The first one of those that they enumerated was life. Life. If you don't have a right to life, you don't have a right to anything. That's your first right, is your right to life. This is a late-term abortion, folks. This is a death penalty. This is not what we're going to allow in this country. This is not what this country is about. Elizabeth Warren is never going to get her single-payer system. We will fight this to the very end. We will fight this as vehemently as we would fight gun confiscation, and for the same reasons. We have to understand that these rights come from God, and we have to understand that we have the liberty to make these kinds of choices, that our parents have the right to make these kind of choices about their children. And as I said in the video, the parent said he'd fight to the very end, but we're not allowed to fight for him anymore. We can't even take our own son home to die. And that is the saddest thing, what you just heard them say. The parents offered, as I said, to pay for this, but they were told it was not an option because it's single payer. And we're going to tell you what you can and cannot do. And I think it's interesting to see Barack Obama, the guy who at the beginning of his campaign could not bring himself to put his hand over his heart even when they played the national anthem or at events. You have the picture that we showed yesterday, the article. You have Bill Richardson, even Hillary Clinton knows better than that. She knows that she has to at least show that she likes the United States outwardly, but Barack Obama could not hide his contempt. He would stand there with his hands down here like this in front of him, folded. He hates this country. And so where is he on this 4th of July? He's in the country that he grew up in Indonesia, in Jakarta. And he is talking about the founding documents of the New World Order, the Paris Climate Agreement, saying that this just is a temporary situation here with Donald Trump. We're going to get that back. You see, he doesn't support any of the principles that this country was founded upon. It's amazing when you look at it, actually. You know, you have Donald Trump making speeches, and as most American politicians would, he talks about the founding document of this country. He quotes the Declaration of Independence. Not Barack Obama. He warns about nationalism. And then he talks about the founding document of the New World Order, of the international order that he thinks that he's going to be in charge of. Is it any wonder, then, that we have this story that Drudge picked up from Infowars.com by Kit Daniels? The History Channel tweets George Washington fighting at Gettysburg. On this day in 1863, the Battle of Gettysburg ends. That was right. It was on July the 3rd, and it was 1863, but it wasn't George Washington, was it? I mean, that's the History Channel. And, of course, if you've seen the History Channel specials, that really shouldn't be anything of a surprise. But here's the thing that's really kind of interesting. If you understand and you know anything about Civil War history, and of course we have a purge that is going on to remove all knowledge of history. It's very easy when people are so ignorant about history that they can put up a picture of George Washington at the Battle of Gettysburg, isn't it? That's the profound ignorance that we have here in our country, because education is no longer about giving people the tools to do their own research. It's not about giving them information. No, it is about social engineering. And of course, the key part of the social engineering is white skin privilege that was created by Bill Ayers. That's why he left the Weather Underground and went into education, because he understood that was how you take over a country. And that's the way they're taking over our country. people like Bill Ayers, people like Nikki Haley, who used the photograph of that heinous murderer, Dylan Roof, has a Confederate flag in the back, and so therefore we have to remove all vestiges of history, regardless of how ignorant we are of it. Understand that the way the South saw this battle, and one of the reasons that Gettysburg was such a disaster, was because Robert E. Lee saw it as the Second War of Independence, and it truly was. Our first war was a war of secession. Our second war was a war of secession, of people who decided that they were going to control us from afar. Does it matter if that government is 100 miles away, or if it's 1,000 miles away, or if it's 5,000 miles away, or if it's on the other side of the ocean? No. We want the right of self-determination. That's what America was founded upon. That's what they fought against. You talk about the economic issues. Very few people in the South owned slaves. It was a rich man's fight, as many have said, but a rich man's war, but a poor man's fight. Most of the people who were involved there saw it as a war of northern aggression. That's what they were fighting for. They were fighting for their independence. And if you want to go back and look at the charges of racism, look at what Abraham Lincoln said. Abraham Lincoln sounded like David Duke when he was talking about his race versus that race and how he wanted supremacy of that. For the most part, in the South, the leaders who owned slaves saw this as a kind of paternalism. And I would say it's the same kind of paternalism that we're now being sold with Obamacare, that we are going to take care of these people. Whether that's really what they believe or not, that was the way they sold it. Yes, it was their self-interest to have slaves. And yes, it was absolutely indefensible to have slaves. But now we're all slaves, aren't we? They abolished individual slavery, but now we have a situation where we're all on Washington's plantation. And we are going to be irrevocably on that plantation if we have a single-payer system. That's what they have tried to do. And, of course, the South saw what was going on. They understood that the economic issues that were involved were much larger than just the slavery economic issues. There were issues of trade, of internal improvements, as they called it, which today is really kind of crony capitalism, taking money from one section of the country for internal projects in another part of the area. That's what they were fighting against. That's what they were standing against. But we don't even know who the players were. But we're taking down the monuments all over this country to our independence, to the spirit of independence. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
What the aging process is when the cell replicates, we lose a little bit of our telomeres. Telomeres are the little cups on the end of our chromosomes.
And when it runs out, you start dying. Secure your DNA force today at InfoWarsLife.com.